Now, I'm delighted to welcome two outsiders, William Matt Briggs. Now, William Briggs goes under the, I guess he gave himself the title, I don't know, but it's a terrific title, the statistician to the stars. Welcome to outsiders, William Briggs. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. How are you guys?
I'm good. Where did the title statistician to the stars come from? It's a great title.
It just sounds great. Tom Cruise never calculates a p-value without consulting me.
Oh, excellent. Perfect. I like it. Now, you've crunched the numbers on the coronavirus. We found out earlier this morning that the modelling used by Imperial College, the source code at the base of it is apparently flawed. This was the millions who are going to die. We've had governments all around the world take action on the coronavirus based on modelling. You think it's, well, baloney. Tell us about it.
It is baloney. And even before we knew the code was flawed in that Imperial model, we should have known immediately that the model was full of it. They said for the United States there would be 2 million deaths if we did nothing. And in the UK, like 500,000, a little bit more than 500,000. But they presented it in terms that they fooled themselves with, because that number of dead per capita would have been far greater than the Spanish flu of 1917, which killed maybe 50 million people all across the globe. They said at the beginning, this bug, this unknown bug was going to kill more people than the Spanish flu. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. They had 50,000 people dying a day in the United States at its peak. And they should have recognized immediately that this model was absurd. There should have been no trust put in this model. But somehow they said, well, you know, that's if we do nothing. If we do these implementations of lockdowns and all this kind of stuff, well, we're going to only kill whatever it was. And that was believed. And it was believed because these guys are experts. Well, trust us. They haven't got any forecasts right before, like mad cow disease and bird flu and all these other things. They blew it on all those too. But somehow now we should trust them. And that was the mistake in the beginning, listening to these models or putting such faith in them.
Now, William, tell us one of the things that you've gone to the heart of as being at the why the statistics are so rubbery, if you like, is this concept of death from coronavirus versus death with coronavirus or death with a suspicion of coronavirus. So talk to us about the differences and how that influences the numbers and the stats.
That's right. This is the first disease I think we have that we count it daily, everywhere. We get these daily, almost hourly counts everywhere. And at first it was dying from. You had to have this bug and nothing else. And they said, okay, now you have a definite death certificate caused by coronavirus. And then that was moved to everywhere dying with. And so that you just had to have this bug among a whole range of other things that you might have had that were probably going to kill you anyway, like pneumonia or obesity or diabetes or heart disease or something else. The people dying of this have multiple co-morbidities on average, other sicknesses. And then they moved from that and they saw that listen, they made these predictions in the United States. They were going to have like 100 to 250,000 dead, even with the lockdowns. And it was becoming clear it wasn't going to be anything near this. And so trillions were already spent. Trillions were already spent. They have a $2 trillion stimulus package, millions of people out of work. The effects of this are going to be felt for years. Now, how would you like to be the guy who said, oh, I'm sorry, we got the model wrong. You know, we forgot to divide by 2. So what you have to do is you have to somehow make the death count seem a little bit worse than it is. So they're doing everything they can. In New York City, they moved to classifying people they haven't even tested, just suspected of dying with or from or having the bug with them. But of course, many people do have this bug. It's spread much wider than the testing indicates, and that must be so. This is something we know with absolute certainty. And so everybody's dying of it. It's very strange. You look at it, the United States, it's about 4% of the world's population, a little bit more. But we have a third of the reported cases are in the United States, and a third of the reported deaths. Now, the United States is supposed to have and does have a great medical system. So how is it that all of these people are keeling over dead from this and not everywhere else? Well, it's because they're not counting as assiduously as the United States is every possible death as a coronavirus death. Now, it's very complicated, but you have to look at in order to tease all this out, you have to look at the all-cause deaths. Now, the government, the CDC in the United States reports every week, and they have since 2009, the number of people who died just based on death certificates of all causes. And you look at that, and every year it peaks up around January because of the flu, or it's presumed to be the flu. And I say presumed because most doctors don't put flu as a cause of death on a death certificate, not all of them. And it's very badly counted. So what happens is, what's used is a statistical model. They go back and look at that data and they run a model over it and they say, well, this is the number of expected deaths. And anything above that sticks out above this model, they call them excess deaths. And that becomes the flu number. Well, is it right? Is it wrong? Nobody knows. You can't go back and check. But it smooths out the deaths. So, all right, we can't even look at the number of flu numbers. We can't even compare this coronavirus, which is counted everywhere by the hour, with these statistical models that are just smooth estimates. So we have to look at the all-cause deaths. And if you look at that, there is a peak. People are dying. I'm not saying this bug is not killing people. It certainly is. But there is a peak that is showing up in March and April that, for right now anyway, unless they add a lot of deaths, is smaller in the United States than the 2018-2019 flu season. And
wow.
It might beat it, but it might not. And look, this is the 57-58 Asian flu pandemic. They estimated killed around 2 million. 2 million in the world. No panics, no lockdowns, no arbitrary bureaucracy ruling over everybody. A decade later, the Hong Kong flu, I guess we're seeing a pattern here. That killed about 1 million people. Again, no lockdowns, no panics. It was much worse everywhere, no panics. The swine flu, estimated to kill anywhere from 200,000 to over 500,000, with a median estimate around 375,000. That was in 2009, and that was also pretty bad in the United States. No lockdowns, no panic, no daily counting, hourly counting of numbers on the headlines all the time, no bureaucracy shutting everything down to save just one life. It's really absurd that we've overreacted to this really unprecedented degree. That's the real question. Why have we overreacted so much to this when we never have before?
Rita.
The argument will be if we didn't overreact, if we didn't take those precautions, the death figures would be inflated considerably. How much of a comparison is a country like Sweden? Obviously, population density is different there, but they haven't had the stringent lockdowns as most other countries. Their death rate is much higher than the Scandinavian neighbours. Do you think that is some evidence that the US, UK, Australia did the right thing by locking down?
No, absolutely not. In fact, I think you could even show that the lockdown has caused some deaths. Don't look at Sweden. Let's look at Taiwan. Taiwan has a population 2.5 times that of Sweden. They have 6 deaths, 6. Very early on, they implemented very common sense procedures. Okay, we're going to stop people coming in from China, number one. And the people that do come in are going to be, if they came from certain areas in which they were suspected to be exposed, those small handful of people had a 2-week quarantine, just themselves, and put up in government-sponsored hotels or in their own homes where they couldn't go out for 2 weeks and had to monitor their health. There's like 480 cases in the country since it began. And they were the first ones to notice it beginning back in January, or first to acknowledge it worldwide. And 6 deaths. You could have very common sense procedures, no lockdowns. The schools opened a little late in January, but they were not shut. No businesses were shut. People have temperatures taken passively. Most places you walk by a camera, it looks at your infrared body heat, that kind of thing. But that's it. That's it. And 6 deaths. Sweden opted for that same strategy. Let's just do this calmly. That maybe they could have done a little bit more in the way of Taiwan, but maybe not. If you look at the people who died and where they died, in the United States, it's New York, it's that area, that metropolitan area, and a little bit in Buffalo and Chicago. All of these places have one thing in common: they're very population dense,
Absolutely.
and they had really, really lousy weather. Lousy weather. That's what causes the flu to go away without government intervention every year. What? It's got to be that people acting normally, and you get out in the sunshine where it kills the virus, and the air, the fresh air, is germicidal, and yet we have bureaucrats telling us, you know, what you can't do is go to the beach, the healthiest place on the planet. Stay away from that.
Exactly. Well, thanks so much. We'll all be down to the beach very soon. Thanks so much, William Matt Briggs, for taking us through those numbers. Fantastic, and thanks so much for coming on Outside. It's been great.